Classroom management. Big part of this I find is the attention and retention that you can get from the group. So just to kind of put things into context, the information that I'm kind of speaking about in terms of mini basketball is under 7s, under 9s, and under 11s. The video examples that I will be using throughout my presentation is predominantly under 9s and under 7s. So first of all, as a part of my classroom management preparation, I like to create a safe learning environment, which I'm sure lots of coaches try to do. Some ways that I do this is try to have non-basketball interactions first, some conversations with the kids, interact with them about either what they did at school. The luxury that we have is we actually do our mini ball session on a Monday, so we can kind of talk to them about how was their weekend and what were their favorite things they did and stuff like that, and kind of create that safe interaction that's not about basketball. Another thing that I like to do, and something that we're getting really big on here in Franklin, is allowing a lot of free space and free time. So there's a cool thing that I think Chris brought up with me in my last podcast I did, which was also kind of based around the mini ball ideas, was that kids play is always intentional and there's a reason for it. So I did some looking into that, and play-based learning is very important for kids. And obviously, if they're finding their own space to be creative before trainings, during trainings, then they're actually player-led, leading their own development. And without us having to kind of lead the way, they can kind of have that space before trainings to kind of get loose and get into it. Another way that we can create a safe learning environment is to just notice small improvements. It doesn't have to be big ones. It can just be like, hey, I noticed that this week you've improved with your dribbling skills, or last week I noticed that you couldn't hit the rim and today you're getting it above and it's hitting the backboard. So great job with that. Classroom management listening tools. So some ways that I use listening tools, there's a lot of them, but I won't talk about all of them. I'll just talk about a few that I use. One is this concept of Coach Says. You might have heard it before or seen it before. It's kind of just a Simon Says concept that we changed to Coach Says. And I find this really helps with kids learning. I've got some examples here that I'll show. Use of timers. So countdowns to get kids in is obviously very important. And a concept that I have called penguin, which is essentially when the kids put the basketball down between their feet whenever the coach is talking, like a penguin holding its egg. And they seem to really love that. So I stick with it. Another way to have classroom management is use of effective questionings, check for retention and learning, and kind of get them to understand like why we listen, why we come in, and why that's important. Cool. So my first example here is my Coach Says game. So really important for obviously listening. We kind of explained to the kids early on that the most important body part of a basketball player is their ears, and how well they can listen is going to help them have more fun and going to help them learn more. So we teach this really early. We use it as a warm-up. It's a great opportunity to be creative, especially for new coaches and for new kids. You can literally do anything with this. And one thing that I like to do, especially in the first few sessions of a mini ball program, is to use the Coach Says game to kind of get them used to their environment, which is, in this video, you'll see me teaching the court lines. Most of these kids probably have already done this before, but you'll see here how I use Coach Says.
Okay, Coach Says, pick up your ball. Coach Says, put your ball up. Put your ball down. Gotcha. Coach Says, you don't get out, you keep playing. Coach Says, put your ball down. Coach Says, stance. Stand up. Didn't say Coach Says. Coach Says, stand up. Okay, Coach Says, dribble to the baseline, the line at the bottom. Let's go. Good. Okay, Coach Says, everyone say baseline. Baseline. Good, and the baseline's at the bottom of the basketball court. So how many baselines are there? And where's the other baseline?
Now, in here, you see me kind of speeding through it a little bit. Now, these kids have done this before, and there were a couple of new kids, but they seem to kind of understand the areas of the court anyway. So what I would normally do is really slow this process down and explain where the baseline is, how many there are. But with this, you'll see me kind of getting through it a little bit faster.
Coach Says, hold the ball in one hand and stretch your arm out. Coach Says, go like this. Oh, Coach Says, hold the ball in two hands. Coach Says, hold the ball in the other hand. Coach Says, go like this. Oh, a little bit tricky. Coach Says, hold the ball. Ball on your head. Oh, I didn't say coach says. Coach says dribble back to this baseline. Good. Coach says put your basketball down. Penguin. Hands on heads. Oh.
Cool, and as you can see there, I used the penguin concept at the end, which I would teach at the very beginning of a session, so they're aware of how to do that. And yeah, there's literally anything that you can think of you can do with this. If you want to incorporate your ball handling warm-up, you can incorporate it into this Coach Says game, so it's a little bit more fun. I don't let kids get out, so if they do make a mistake and I don't say Coach Says, they can continue. However, with some older age groups, you could give them lives or they could essentially get out. So yeah. Some other examples of classroom management that probably seem a little bit non-traditional are these three things here. So I use intentional chaos. Now this is being messy to be organized. This also kind of helps with the kids feeling safe where they are in the beginning and kind of getting to understand like what areas they're allowed to play in, who their classroom teammates are, or their teammates are on the court. And this kind of allows for that free time and that player-led learning. So you'll see this a lot throughout the sessions and some of the examples that I show. Another thing that I use for classroom management is obviously our team ins, which we also call timeouts. And I try to get the kids in to just kind of like reflect on what we've either just done, what we're about to do next, and just to add or provide some more value for the players in whatever activity they're doing. It's really fun, I find. Now, it is quite challenging in the beginning, especially with these younger age groups. Some of these kids are 5, so getting them in can be a challenge, but I'll talk about ways that I do that. And yeah, space for play, asking questions for solutions, and providing players opportunities to think for themselves. So in this video here, there'll be some examples about all of these three things and kind of how I incorporate these into my trainings. So as you can see here, I'm in the middle and I'm actually tying my shoelace, and I'm totally okay with what's going on. We were actually supposed to be doing an activity, but just to show that this time in between is fine and this time before is also fine. Good job. 4, 3, 2, and penguin. Now, does anybody know, why do you think so I'm about to go into a little bit of details around, like I said before, is the 4, 3, 2, 1 and getting kids to come in quickly. And here you'll see me explaining or asking them questions around why we think this is important. Now, you did notice that some of the kids did come in slow and there were some new kids in this session. So being patient is clearly an option here. And the other thing I like to do, and we do, is kind of really just get the kids to buy into the why we come in quickly and why we want to move on. So you'll see me kind of talking about that here. I'll just go back a little bit. We come in quickly. Good. What did you say? So we can have more game time. Because if we come in slow when I call you in, do we get to play more? Or do we have to talk? We have to talk. Now, I want you to play more basketball. So do you think if we come in quicker, we get to play more? Yeah. Okay, really good job. We're going to get a drink break. So you have 2 minutes drink break and free time. 2 minutes drink break and free time. Now, as you can see, the kids are very excited to go off and have their free time, which we do a lot throughout the sessions. Now, this is not to kind of get misconfused with like fun is frivolous and they just get to run amok, but we do allow spaces and training for them to kind of have that self-exploration phase and play outside of what we're trying to do. When we're doing these layups, do you think we should lay it up at the same hoop or find space? Okay, so go to a hoop where there's more space, where there's a dot with no one on it. Cool. So those were just some ways that I do and use for classroom management. Now I'll move on to player timeouts, which I think is is very, very cool. I recently did a post on my Instagram story about this particular moment where these kids were playing a game of 3-on-3 mini basketball, which is a smaller size basketball court. And throughout the game, we were about to kind of have a team in together, and these 5, 6, 7-year-olds asked to have their own player timeout, which is something that we do allow, and it was very, very cool to see. So using these player timeouts, obviously they're player-led, coach monitored. However, we don't want them really kind of going off on a massive tangent about what they had for lunch and stuff like that. So kind of just monitoring this process. If they need a little bit of guidance, usually we just keep it to simple solutions around what some things on offense, what some things on defense we can improve on. It's an opportunity for them to bond in their teams. Creativity comes out post player timeouts. Obviously it's fun and they get to buy into their learning process. It's not just coach led the whole entire time. So I kind of just asked them what they think we need to do a better job of, and then they wanted to continue in their own groups. Now, you can clearly see here that they are actually actively talking and pointing and discussing some plans around what they need to do better to create space, and some other things that they brought up was how they can share the ball a little bit better. So it was just really cool to see from these 5, 6, 7-year-old kids.